on a journey that's sort of more health and wellness related, because I started truly understanding the importance of that as an athlete, and then later on as a husband, as a father, things like that.
Welcome to the Juggling the Chaos of Recovery podcast Wellness Spot, where we focus on health and wellness and how you can reclaim your health and life today. You're in the right place if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and you've been helping so many others. It's time to help yourself. In a time when health and wellness can be so confusing, I'll share my knowledge as a nurse and 20 years in wellness and help you navigate through. You will hear stories of people who have used the Shaklee products, including me, as they have truly been a game changer for health. And I'm here to tell you that it's never too late to pay attention to your health and how making a smart plan with natural choices can help you live your best life today. Well, welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm your host, Moira Gorski, and today is a Wellness Wednesday episode. And I try to share about wellness and about choices that I've made in choosing products and just different wellness things that I've learned along the way so that I can show up the best for me. It's been a game changer to use the Shaklee product line, and it's all about the Shaklee, but it's made such a big difference in my life and my health and those around me. And today I am bringing to you, I'm very honored to be able to share with you Eli Bremer, who is an Olympic athlete. He's a modern pentathlete. He's competed in the Summer Games of 2008 in China. I have known him through my involvement with Shaklee. I've met him at different events and meetings and really been, again, blessed to be connected with him. And I'm really grateful that I can bring him to you today to talk about, again, many of the things that I talk about on this podcast: overcoming challenges, overcoming health challenges in particular, and again, about the smart choices that we can make. And when we make those smart choices, what a difference it can make in our health and in our life. So before I continue on, thank you, Eli, for joining me today.
Well, thanks, Moira. Great. We could finally get the schedule. We had a few hiccups. I guess two busy people have trouble finding the same place at the same time.
Right. Yep. Glad that we can connect today. And I appreciate your patience with that rescheduling as well. I guess we both had to reschedule a few times. So
a couple of
times. So, as I've learned, again, through hearing you speak and going out to dinner with you and have conversations, you had some health challenges as you were becoming an athlete, or as you were an athlete and as you were working towards bettering yourself as an athlete. And I think it's really fascinating to hear that story. So as I do with a lot of these podcasts, I ask people to start with their story. So if you can start by sharing that, that your challenges with your health as it related to you being a better performer and, things like that, I'd love to start there.
Sure. Well, I'll start out by saying that, people assume because I was, an Olympic athlete and one of the fastest all-time athletes in running and swimming, that I grew up as a naturally gifted athlete and everything athletically came to me on a silver platter. And really nothing could be farther from the truth. I remember trying out for the swim team when I was, I think, 8 years old. And it took me 3 attempts to get on the worst swim team in town because I was so bad. And then when I was 13, my parents pulled me aside one day. I have never forgotten this day, and my parents and I still joke about it. They pulled me aside and we were in the kitchen and they said, it's time for a little honest conversation about your athletic abilities. It's just not panning out for you. And, you're really more cut out to do things like piano and stuff like that. So we think you should quit the swim team and really focus on where your talent is. And while I was not a particularly good athlete at the time, I was in fact a particularly good negotiator. And I talked my parents into letting me drop piano and lean more into swimming. And more on that later in terms of the future of wellness and why that becomes important. But then I started swimming more. I got better and better. And by the time I was a senior in high school, I was a Division I swimming recruit, cross country recruit. I broke 4 city records in swimming and was really well on my way to becoming a true elite athlete. So I was a two-sport athlete at the Air Force Academy. That's an incredibly difficult academic program, sometimes taking 23, 24 credits while doing, military work while trying to compete in Division I sports is pretty difficult. So made conference in both swimming and fencing. I was the team captain of the fencing team. And then after the academy, I started pursuing my dream of going to the Olympics. I dabbled in the modern pentathlon in high school and a little bit in college. But I knew that my true pursuit would be after graduation. And so pentathlon, shooting, fencing, swimming, horseback riding, and running, and got into that very seriously, made my first world championship team in 2001. 2002, I won my first national championship. But that's when I sort of hit some of my first serious health issues. I was training full time at the Olympic Training Center, and I felt like I just was in quicksand. I couldn't move, just felt terrible. Went in and got a bunch of tests, found out I was extremely iron deficient. I was extremely anemic, and we had to rule out things like cancer and all that. But then it became very clear I just wasn't absorbing enough iron. And so I tried to fix it with diet. That didn't work. I was eating liver and onions 5 days a week. The staff at the Olympic Training Center, they'd have it prepared for me at lunch every day. And it's disgusting. Like, it is just,
I agree.
it's not a good thing. And I was eating spinach and all this other kind of stuff. And the reason for that was that there's in the Olympics, drug testing is extremely strict. And I didn't want to be taking any supplements that were potentially contaminated. And so I was just trying to deal with this purely by diet. And that didn't work. Eventually, I went to the head physiologist. He recommended a product that I could go get it at the store down the street. He said, no one's tested positive on it yet. And I'm like, well, gee, that's at least something. And so tried that. I was taking about 15 times the recommended daily allowance of iron and wasn't moving the needle still. I could barely train. I was just so fatigued. And then my mom, who has a doctorate in human nutrition, was talking to me about it at one point. And she asked, okay, what are you on? And I told her, and she said, we ought to look at what Shaklee has. And I said, what difference does it make? I mean, iron is iron is iron. And she said, no, it's not. There's actually several different forms of iron, and not all of them are absorbed the same way. And that was the first time I ever understood that potency and absorption actually matters. And so we actually ordered some of Shaklee's iron, and within probably 4 to 6 weeks, my ferritin, which is your blood iron, spiked. And the core issue was that I've been taking iron that's much cheaper, less expensive, but it's also less absorptive. And so it was ripping my stomach apart, and it wasn't even getting into my system. And so over the next, it's been, nearly 2 decades now, and on a journey that's sort of more health and wellness related, because I started truly understanding the importance of that as an athlete. And then, later on as a husband, as a father, things like that. But fast forward a number of years down the road, I missed my first Olympic team chance in 2004. I broke my foot while I was running in practice one day. Wound up working for NBC as an Olympic commentator. Had a great experience in Athens, Greece, and dedicated myself to another 4 years of training. But I decided I really wanted to not just be like, I'd always sort of wanted to be the toughest trainer, but I said, I need to put my brain to use. And I want to really focus on being the best at everything and paying attention to little things. And so I started auditing everything in my life. And one of the places I got to was nutrition, and sort of overall wellness is associated with nutrition. And I said, okay, I need to weaponize this. I need to use it as a strategy. It's not binary. It's either good or it's bad. I sort of said, how extreme can I get on being healthy and using nutrition? That led to my number 2 in the world ranking. So I sort of learned how to use nutrition to weaponize as an athlete. And then, fast forward, we can talk more about sort of all the Olympians I work with and their nutrition, but it became much more personal to me in 2014. My wife and I discovered she was pregnant, and she has some serious health problems. She has a rare vascular disease. And so one of the things that we used to support her during her pregnancy was extremely targeted nutrition. And, we have some of the best medical care in the world for her condition out here in Colorado, but she wound up going into, she wound up having to go into the hospital at 24 weeks and then doing an emergency delivery at 27 weeks to our son, who was 1.5 pounds at birth. And so, so we really looked at it and said, okay, we need to use nutrition as a, now not as a sports thing, not to win on the field of play, but to win, to win in life. And fast forward another 2 years, my son, was in all sorts of therapy. He spent 105 days in the hospital at the start of life. And he was basically getting ready to be diagnosed with something that's called failure to thrive, which basically means that he's not just developing on the schedule of a child, and we don't know why. And my wife was in medical management at the time, very, very actively taking a role in his healthcare. And we had a bunch of blood tests done, and it came back. We were looking for, like, is there an underlying syndrome we don't know, like cystic fibrosis, something like this. And we discovered that he had extremely low ferritin, blood iron as well. And the medical professionals at first sort of said, well, that wouldn't describe, why is he having all these other things? And I said, well, what if he can't uptake oxygen? If you're constantly oxygen deprived, which is what happens if you're low on iron, you can't form enough red blood cells, and it really causes the rest of your systems to sort of struggle. What if it's just generic lethargy across the system because he has no iron in his system? So we actually put him on liquid multivitamin with an adult dose of iron that Shaklee had. It's, I guess running their major sponsorship program has its perks, because I was able to say, okay, what's in this? How safe is it? So we ran it by the doctors and stuff and said our very fragile child can take this. And the results were pretty stunning, because when we did an analysis of his liquid diet at almost 2 years old, he couldn't eat solid foods. And so he was on a physician prescribed liquid diet, and we realized that he was about 30% deficient in micronutrients across the board. So we started supplementing him, and it was very important. These are clean, pure supplements, because you got a kid with terrible medical condition to begin with. The last thing you want to do is be giving him heavy metals and things like that. There's a lot of contaminants in the supplements that are sold off the shelf these days. So anyway, we started supplementing him. And, we were working with physicians, and again, I want to make very clear, this was an extreme medical situation. We were consulting with great doctors, and within about, 10, 11 days, our son suddenly, it just felt like he woke up. He went from not being able to walk. He could walk 3-4 steps to, we went on a walk to the end of our neighborhood and back, which is about a quarter mile, all in under 2 weeks. And all of a sudden, all of his systems just started clicking. Within 5 months, we went from a therapist every day of the week to all 5 therapists had fired him and said, okay, he's on schedule now. We're not worried about him anymore. And really what we were dealing with was a massive nutritional deficiency that was on a physician prescribed diet. And I don't, I'm not going to say the medical community screwed up or anything like that. This is just, sometimes things get very extreme. And so it became very personal to us, the importance of nutrition in overall health and wellness, because, going to the Olympics, being one of the best athletes in the world is important, but making sure your son has a shot at life, let's just say they're not quite in the same category. So I've sort of run the whole gamut there in terms of how nutrition's impacted my life and the life of my family.
Yeah. It's a fascinating story, and I always am fascinated and in awe of it every time I hear it. And although we're not all, certainly those that are listening to the podcast, we're not all striving to be the best in the world to get to the Olympics, we do want to, I think we all deserve to live our best life, as I say. And, the fact that this kind of came full circle for you, starting with your own, and then, being able to use that knowledge that you had learned about in your son, in yourself, to help with your son, I think is pretty remarkable and pretty cool, if you will. I'd like to back up a little bit, just even, to kind of step away from the nutrition part of it for a sec, but just say, like, okay, so you swam and you ran. And so then how did you, and you said, I got introduced to pentathlon in high school. Well, you and I are, I don't know, about the same age, maybe you're a little younger than me. Like, I never heard about that in high school. Like, Were you just an overachiever? Because like when you hear people like, I do 5 sports, well, I do 1. And so then like, did you just want to be an overachiever, or was that just something?
No, it said I was the last person anybody thought growing up would ever go to the Olympics. In fact, I'd grown up riding horses competitively, not serious competition. We did 4-H and some hunter jumper stuff. But my old coach, when my mom was talking to her at one point, she said, did you know one of your students made the Olympics? And she said, oh yeah, I always knew Justin had a good chance to go all the way. And Justin's one of my older brothers. And my mom's like, no, it was Eli. And she was like, what? So I can get into that a little bit more later of some of the stuff I've learned in the years since. But I actually, my mom met a pentathlete. We grew up just next to the Air Force Academy, and I was on the youth swim team there. My mom was swimming. She picked up swimming as physical therapy when she wrecked her knee when I was a kid. And so she was swimming, just exercise. Wound up talking to a young couple. The husband was an instructor at the Air Force Academy, a PE instructor. And, he said, they were talking about sports, and they said, well, yeah, we did this sport, the pentathlon. And, my mom, doing what every mom said, well, my kids are swimmers and they ride horses. So logically speaking, they're going to be amazing at this sport, and I'm sure he was like rolling his eyes. So he met all 3 of us and went back to my mom and said, well, the older 2 have some potential. So my brothers were like, it was like, okay, great. I'm the youngest of 3, so I get to play tag along. And so, they went to a few competitions and, we're like thinking about taking it seriously. And I'm just the little tag along baby brother. But I stuck with it, and I actually had a lot more talent than anybody realized. We know a lot more about genetics and things like that now. That's been the last few years I've been working in genetics in health and wellness. And, so I actually had tons of talent. I was just in a program that didn't tap into it. So anyway, so that's how I heard about the pentathlon. And then that gentleman eventually became one of my coaches, coached me all the way through the Olympics. And, we developed a very, very, very good relationship to this day. But that's how I sort of got into it.
Yeah. Well, and I mentioned this to Bill Roy, who I had interviewed a little bit ago, who was also in the Air Force Academy. And I told him that, and I may have shared this with you, but our youngest son, Tommy, is not going to the Air Force Academy, but he will be enlisting in the Air Force. And his dream is to become a mechanic for all those planes and helicopters. And we're thrilled for him, and he'll be heading off in August. But he just went to MEPS, which whatever that stands for, is that, is the day that they go and get their physical and go through the different testing. He's already gone through the academic testing and made that. So his recruiter, he shared with me, who I've met a couple of times, and Tommy, he's a great kid. He's pretty slight. I mean, he's a hockey player, but he hasn't played hockey in the last year and a half. And he's been working, there's a weight requirement to enter the Air Force. And he was just at that point when he met with the recruiter first off. So he said, you can't drop below 125, and you actually have to try to gain some weight. So he's been kind of, he's been working hard the last few weeks to work out and to do the protein and, try to build up some muscle mass and gain some weight. So his recruiter reached out to him to give him the details about MEPS and said, so are you drinking any protein powder? You taking anything like that? And he said, yeah, I've been, I do it after I work out and I add the creatine. And so he says, stop all of that until you get through your MEPS. And because he said somebody just got bumped because their drug test came up. So I said, well, you know what? You can stop taking that creatine. I don't know where you get that you're taking, but you don't have to stop taking your Shaklee protein. And I don't know if he really paid attention to me, or really understands the value of that. But I certainly do, and that's what you certainly have taught us in the field. Is that there is, and just what we talked about, there is such a difference in the products that the protein products out there, the sports products out there, and again, with that, so maybe we talk a little bit about the Olympics and the Olympic athletes, and you alluded to it a little bit, like why most Olympic athletes won't come close to taking a supplement or protein because there might be something wrong with it. Just like, again, that could have derailed my son's chance for getting into the Air Force, as it can derail the chances of someone, making it to the Olympics too. So,
yeah, it's really bad. The most recent research I saw showed it was about 80% of products in this sort of sector have some form of contaminants. Now, some of them are more benign than others. With that said, the contaminants are usually pretty bad. In some cases, it's things like heavy metals. So you're not going to test positive on a drug test for that, but it's not good. I mean, there's a reason we don't we don't have lead paint anymore, things like that. And so that's a huge problem. And you often kind of get what you pay for in terms of health products. So like when I was taking all this cheap iron, it was actually clean. It probably was not contaminated, but it also didn't do anything for me. So what's the point? If you're taking a synthetic vitamin D, you're not really going to absorb that. And I actually see that quite a bit right now, where people are taking they're taking products that are very inferior and they're not getting results. And we kind of know that from other areas. I mean, if you look at a car company and you look at various different brands, I mean, when you see Lexus, that you're going to pay more for that, but you're getting a better quality car. And that's true with virtually everything, and supplements are no exception. And what a lot of people do fail to see, though, is that it does come down to the two P's, purity and potency. And purity matters because if you are getting drug tested, that's important. But also, like for my son, everybody sort of assumes that if it comes with a proper label or something, it's gonna be pure. When we put him on iron from Shaklee, we were actually giving him the liquid vitamins called Liquili, and he had actually, to this day, he's still got a feeding tube through his stomach, a G tube, so that we can get him medicines and stuff like that on an emergent basis. And we were grinding up the same iron I was taking, putting it in water, dissolving it, and then putting it right into his stomach. And so we were doing that, and the doctors were like, "We're going to write you a prescription anyway. You can go down to Walgreens, get your prescription." So probably, I don't know, 3-4 weeks after they'd done that, we get a call from the pharmacy saying, "Are you taking this iron?" And we said, "No." And they said, "Okay, throw it out." Why? It's contaminated. We had a national issue. All of it's contaminated. Stop, don't use it, throw it out. And that came out of a pharmacy. So, if you can get that out of a pharmacy, imagine what you're getting out of, some of these other products that are unregulated. And, if they're selling it by a discount, well, that's, it costs money to produce good products. So
and that's the
get
thing.
what you pay for.
Right. I mean, and the thing is, people just don't know, and they trust, they trust the one that perhaps has the most money to put into advertising, or that some athlete decides to get, accept the payment for, taking the product or something like that. And, I also just thought of, when you were talking, like my background in nursing, like if you have a prescription, you take the prescription dose, right? You wouldn't think like, okay, I'm feeling a little less than good, so I'm going to take double the dose, but but with the right supplementation and the right quality, and like you said, with your particulars, with your son, under the guidelines of a doctor, I mean, you can take more than is on the label, and it's going to be okay. It's actually, you're going to be that much better.
But, and this is an interesting point. We're at the genesis of a new set of understandings about how nutrition works. And I sort of alluded to this earlier. The last few years, I've been really geeking out on genetics and how genetics interact our bodies for human performance. And by that, I don't just mean, how does an Olympic athlete win a gold medal? But I mean, human performance is, how do you get out of bed in the morning? How do you have the energy to get through a day? How do you extend your life? How do you extend the quality of your life? Things like that's all human performance. One of the things I discovered was that I actually am extremely talented as a mid-distance athlete, but I have to do a lot more cardiovascular work than the average person to tap into that. So when I was 13, I was only swimming 3 days a week. And, a year later, I was swimming 11 practices a week, and I was tearing everybody up because I was playing into my genetics. When I was 23 and terribly anemic, we didn't know why. we now know why. My body has trouble absorbing iron, a lot of trouble. And guess what? I kind of pass that on to my son. So that's how genetics work. And so one of the things that I'm coming to believe is that our understanding of the RDA, the recommended daily allowance, is probably wrong because it assumes that everybody's the same. And everybody's not the same. I have a genetic predisposition toward low vitamin D. And especially it's wintertime right now, so I'm not outside as much. I'm taking 3 to 4 times the RDA for vitamin D. And yet, and that's just to stay normal. And so a lot of people sort of think, okay, why should I supplement? If I eat a healthy diet, I'll be fine. That's actually not true. Your nutritional needs are different than other people. You may need 2 or 3 times the RDA of one thing, and you might need 1/10 of it. I hyperabsorb calcium. It's like if I look at a glass of milk, my bones get stronger. And interestingly, calcium binds to iron. So not only do I hyperabsorb calcium, but the calcium sucks the iron out of my body. So I'm an adult male who has to take iron supplements. My son has to take iron supplements. So our understanding of nutrition is getting so much bigger. And a lot of people have said, well, I'm getting the RDA. That's all that matters. Actually, it's a lot more complex than that. And we're gaining some understanding of how that works and why it works.
Well, and the RDA, what I understood in nursing school is it kind of is that baseline, if you will, so that you don't get the disease, right? If the amount of vitamin C you need in order to not get scurvy. So it's not really right to live into your optimal life.
I would actually say that we're now learning that you can take the RDA and that may not even be good enough for some people. I have to supplement with vitamin D because the RDA is not enough for me. And so again, our understanding of nutrition is growing by leaps and bounds with what scientific research is now showing. And I think it's important for people to realize that your best friend may be doing a program that works for them, and you need to look at what's right for you. So you may have someone who does fairly well without having to do a lot of supplementation. That being said, I think probably everybody's short of something. I really do. That's why multivitamins are awesome. I was given a speech to an elite developmental group sports camp a week and a half ago. Someone said, what's the most important thing in your nutritional regimen? I said, a multivitamin. We're still working on that like truly tailored approach. We're going to have it at some point. But right now we use the multivitamin because you're not wrong to take more of certain vitamins, that you may not be short in. But if you don't get your deficiencies up, your health will never be optimal.
Mm-hmm. Right. And it's that, as I talk about all the time, it's up building your health on a good foundation, right? We got to get that good foundation of your house. If you're building a house, if there are cracks in the foundation, then it doesn't matter what you put above it. It's all going to come, tumbling down. And, I know we've talked about the meology, which Shaklee developed, which is a good, next step in trying to personalize our nutrition. It's not as fancy, if you will, or as sophisticated as doing genetic testing and things like that, which I find, again, my science geeking part, I could talk to you forever about science because I love that. It can really get super specific. And I think it's fascinating because, again, if you are looking at pushing yourself to the limit and trying to be the best in the Olympics or in the military to fight fight for the country. Or as a parent. Yeah. Again, people have heard my story that, having, and you can perhaps relate to this, having someone struggle that's, one of your children, it leads to an amount of stress that you really have never encountered before. And it can make has a huge impact on your health.
So it does. And I think what's important here, I love the saying that when it comes to health and nutrition, there is no one size fits all. There's a one size fits one. And, I think the analogy that Shaklee's using is a good step forward toward that and saying, your health journey is a journey. You'll learn more and more about yourself. And that it's very individualistic. With that said, there's also some commonalities. So for instance, taking contaminated supplements is bad for everyone. Taking protein powders that have heavy metals in them is bad for 100% of people. So, there are some lessons that you can have that are applicable to everyone. And then there's also an understanding of saying, okay, as you walk along your health journey, you're going to discover things that are really useful for you. Some people respond incredibly well to intermittent fasting. I have people who come up to me and said, keto is absolutely right for everyone. I say, that's actually not what genetics say. There are people that respond pretty well to that. There are people that don't. And so I think as people look at their own health journey, it's important to say it's a journey. It takes a little bit of trial and error, but there are some fundamentals. Taking a vitamin D product that you can absorb is always going to be better than one you don't. It's really hard to get vitamin D toxicity, but I use that a lot because it's pertinent to me. I have vitamin D deficiency, and right now we're dealing with COVID-19, and your bodily vitamin D levels are extremely important in terms of the how much that disease attacks you. So I've been cramming vitamin D supplements every single day since the pandemic started, because I'm like, hey, if I get this thing, I want to be able to defend myself, and I can't just eat a healthy diet and get enough vitamin D. That's me personally with my genetics.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Very good, wise words that I hope people heard there. So you, again, became an Olympic athlete. You were a sponsored athlete from Shaklee. And then you decided a couple of years later to, again, start a team and start, spreading that, what you've learned about nutrition, and optimizing your nutrition, optimizing your performance, and taking that to share with other Olympic athletes. So let's talk just a little bit about that. Again, the reason for doing that, or what you've learned, or really what you hope to share in that.
Well, this is birthed out of the issue that in sports to this day, there's still mass paranoia about taking any form of supplementation. And that has to do with the contaminants. Olympic athletes are tested all the time. If you have a contaminant in your system, you get a ban. And it tarnishes your reputation too, because everyone's sort of wondering, okay, gosh, you said you got it from your supplement, but were you actually cheating? So, culturally inside elite sports, there's a heavy bent towards saying, okay, if you can avoid supplements, let's do it. And I couldn't avoid it because I had, massive levels of iron deficiencies that can only be dealt with via supplementation. So when I did all my research on Shaklee, on their product purity, things like that, I was comfortable taking them. But I was having a conversation with the at the time chief marketing officer of Shaklee in 2011, and at one point I said, do you know you're like the only product that's actually really pharmacy grade? And this is a struggle a lot of athletes have is confidence taking clean products. And he said, I had no idea that was so important in your world. And I said, yeah. And I said, I think there'd be a lot of athletes who'd actually, would like to know, you guys don't have a formalized way. Shaklee was kind of running an ad hoc sort of program, and the next year we had 17 athletes in the Olympics with 7 medals. That was pretty good. And they said, this is actually really cool. We love the story of this, because these are not, high dollar athletes that we're paying to take our products. These are athletes who are like, I need to supplement to be the best in the world. So that's Pure Performance, and it's grown now to this massive endeavor. I don't know how many athletes we've got. I think we've already got 35 athletes on board who are competing in the next Olympics. Will be way more than that, just because there's qualifications still going on. But we've had the last 2 Winter Olympics, 10% of the entire U.S. team, right around 10%, are using Shaklee products. And again, that's driven by a desire for pure products. So, it's definitely been a lot of fun to work with those athletes. Some of them it's just sort of boosting their health and wellness. And some of them, we have athletes that come in the door that are just dying. They're dealing with something. It's super tough. We have a diver who came to us a number of years ago, I think 3 years ago now. And she said, I don't have enough energy to make it through practice. And we spent 9 months or a year working with her, getting blood tests done, working with doctors, physicians, and dialing in a nutritional regimen. And she's off to the races. I think she's on task to make her second Olympic team this summer. We have a fencer, same story, came in, She was telling me how much difficulty she was having, had some medical issues. We were able to really get that dialed in. And I remember she called me a couple weeks later and said, I've only been doing this regimen. It was a really, really specialized regimen. I mean, we hit it hard. Vitamin D was, I think, one of her deficiencies, and we walloped it. And she calls me up and was like, Eli, it's only been a few weeks, and boy, it feels night and day difference. Is it possible, or do you think it's placebo? I said, no, it's, when you feed your body what it needs and you're trying to do such an extreme thing, it makes sense. And she'll be going back to her second Olympics this summer. So, it's really fun. A lot of people ask questions, well, don't you just pay these, famous athletes to say they're like you? No, we don't. We actually partner with them and work with them to weaponize nutrition for their benefit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's a great thing. And again, how exciting, because when you're working towards that goal, if you can find something that can be your silver bullet, and I love that, weaponizing your nutrition to take you to that high level. I mean, and that's safe and pure, it's a good thing.
But Moira, you don't have to be an Olympian to do that. You can weaponize your nutrition to be as healthy of a parent as you can be, to be as best of a businessman as you can be. I mean, if you think about it, I work in some pretty interesting spaces in business and wind up in some pretty interesting meetings. And your cognitive ability when you're in those meetings matters a lot. The ability to be able to track complex things. So whether that's business or, as I said, as a parent or as a friend, whatever, nutrition impacts everything we do. And I think a lot of people just gloss over that. But if you think about it, every molecule in your body started as a piece of food that you ate at one point. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you go build a house and you get lousy building materials, what kind of outcome do you think you're going to have? Right. So, it's just logical if you're building your body, and whether it's, physical or mental or emotional, nutrition plays a serious role in this because it impacts everything we do. I don't want to say it's a solution to 100% of the problems, that you face. I mean, there's obviously complex issues that go beyond that. We've seen that in my family's life, but it's a really, really solid starting point to develop health and wellness is through your nutrition.
I could not agree with you more. I mean, I deal with that. I get get feedback, have people say, in my coaching too, of helping them, be healthier. They'll say, well, this is just the way I am, and this is the way I always feel. And so many people think that that's the baseline that they have to accept. And yeah, like you said, you don't have to be an Olympic athlete to just really take a look at what can really help you yourself, just feel good and show up. And I have to tell you that, again, many that are listening to this podcast have someone that's in their life that struggled with an eating disorder. And I do myself. And I have a daughter that continues to struggle with that. And I mean, it hurts me to the core to see it, but I've seen it firsthand, somebody who's malnourished and how cognitively they can't show up, energized, why she can't show up. The decisions, it's so hard. And it's still amazing to me to see what she can do and how she can think, but she's so subpar. And that's what people deal with, again, when it's extreme, when it's an eating disorder. But so many of us, just like you said, regular life, we're just not getting, because we think we can get everything from our food. We think we don't, or we take the vitamins from Osco that are the, wonderful 2-for-1s that we're probably just eliminating out and never absorbing. So never taking it. So again, I can't agree with you more. You don't have to be an Olympic athlete. And nutrition, I do truly believe, is the core to so much of our better life.
And Moira, I also think that a lot of it is people understanding you're never going to be perfect with this. There are going to be times when your choice is you have nothing to eat or you're going to go to get a fast food, whatever. Okay. So let's be realistic as human beings and say we're not going to be perfect with anything. But on the continuum, the more good choices you can make, that's helpful. If you've got deficiencies or you got predispositions for deficiencies, preemptively supplementing is helpful. And so don't judge yourself as much by accumulation of the bad choices you make. Try to judge yourself on the accumulation of good choices. I tell people the best workout you can do is the one you do. Get
right.
out the door and go for a walk if you're not going to do anything. If you're going to go for a walk and you decide to upgrade it to a jog, that's maybe a little bit better. But pat yourself on the back for doing the right things, because it's pretty easy to get down on yourself, whether it's nutrition or exercise or whatever it is, and say, I can't measure up to perfection. Therefore, I'm going to just throw in the towel. I can't, I'm not going to eat all organic food all the time and make my own food and all this. So what the heck, I'll just eat fat. Like, I can't be perfect, so I won't try. No. Just do it a little bit better than you were and build on that. And good health is a accumulation of good decisions.
Right. And I talk about that all the time. It's just really about the choices that you make. And you can still walk into a fast food restaurant and take a look. And if that's your only choice in the middle of the night, in Podunk, Iowa, and there's a good choice and there's a not so good choice. So just try to make try to make the good choices and know that it is, we're not about perfection. We're about progress. We're about, again, choices and the culmination of all those decisions. And I think it's a good place to kind of wrap things up. You gave us a good couple of, words of wisdom there, but anything just kind of, in your experience of life. And again, I'm only giving you a few minutes here, but just a couple of those last words. Again, you talked about, good decisions there. At least get out and do it. A couple other kind of tips that you like to leave the audience with.
Yeah. Remember, you've got one body, you wear it your whole life. Okay. There's no mulligans on that. And I've never heard anyone regret saying, I'm going to try to just make some healthier choices with whatever that is. If it's mental health, emotional health, physical health, things like that. And so I would encourage people, again, I see people get down on themselves all the time. Elite athletes get down on themselves. I was talking to one of our athletes who she'd gone to the Pan American Games, and she had a really good start in the fencing. And then she had kind of, she was actually doing really, really well, and then lost the touch. And then it just sort of collapsed after that. And she fortunately still qualified for the Olympics. But we went out for a run the week after to talk about her competition. And I said, what do you think went wrong? I think she'd won 7 touches in a row starting, and then lost like 4 in a row after. I said, what went wrong? And she thought about it, and she said, I don't know, I should have tried to reset or something. I said, the first thing you should do is forgive yourself. When you screw up, forgive yourself and move on from it, because we're all going to make mistakes. And even, that was a mistake on the day she qualified for the Olympics. And so if you can make a mistake on the day you qualify for the Olympics, you can make a lot of mistakes just walking through life. So I think having forgiveness for yourself is a great start to whatever that journey is, and saying, you know what, I'm not going to be perfect. And I'll tell you something, you think Olympic athletes have perfect bodies? They don't. Every athlete struggles with that, all these things. I just got off the phone with a fairly well-known Olympic gold medalist talking about some struggles. Everyone's imperfect. No one's got a perfect body. No one's got a perfect life. Forgive yourself. And then that frees you to make good decisions instead of say, I'm condemned to making bad decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really good. Really, really good. Again, this isn't when I was talking with somebody today, and people that have heard my podcast know that, I started ballroom dancing, and I'm trying to get out of my own way and enjoy that. And I've got a competition coming up in 2 weeks. And you know what? Yeah. I'm starting to get in my own head about it, and like that I can't do it. And like, what the hell am I doing going to this? And my girlfriend said, listen, you're just going to get your feet wet. Like, you've been like, and you're not competing against anybody else. And like, whatever, I got to get out of my own way. And so like, I feel like it's going to be this test of, I don't know, the next 2 weeks. And I got to go dance today so that I can give myself that confidence that I can do, that I'm going to do all right.
Here's a piece of trivia that I don't think you knew.
Okay.
I actually have competed in ballroom dancing.
You have?
So after the Olympics, I was asked to do a local Dancing with the Stars tournament.
Oh, no.
And I spent about 4 months. Yeah, I spent about 4 months. I think we were training 3 times a week with a pro. And I will tell you, I was more nervous doing that dance competition than I think I was at the Olympics. I was a ball at first because, I mean, it's one thing to stick on a Speedo and have 10 million people look at you when you're training for it. It's another thing to step onto a dance floor. And I was doing a West Coast Swing Cha-Cha medley. Oh my gosh, I was a ball of nerves. So you're in good company.
Yeah, well, thanks. Yeah, and I'm got to tell you, I'm just not there yet with the rhythm. And I think that I know there's a lot for me to learn there, but I'm like a smooth girl. And maybe it's because I've played, the piano since I was 5 years old, and I played waltz and Chopin and Bach. I mean, I love that. You put that music on and I can feel it. So I'm a smooth, so it's the waltz and the foxtrot and the tango and the Viennese waltz. So, but I got to tell you, I've just been in my head today all day, and I gotta make that stop. So,
well, I'll leave with this. I used to get in my head all the time going into competitions, trying to figure out how to be perfect. And then I actually worked years with a sports psychologist. A lot of athletes do. And what I started doing was planning to screw up. And a lot of people are like, why would you do that? I said, well, because it's going to happen anyway. And so I would not actually plan on how I was going to screw up, but I would say, when it happens, I'm going to have a plan for overcoming it. And that came for me the day I qualified for the Olympics. At the time we were doing slow fire shooting, and I think the 6th or 7th shot, and I jerked the trigger, shot like a 4, which is a train wreck of a shot. And I sat down and I thought, yep, I just did that. And I said, okay, you can still be okay with it. And thought it through. I said, okay, what caused the mistake? I'm like horribly embarrassed. There's tons of people watching this live, and I just made a fool of myself. All right, let's focus on a couple fundamentals. I came back, I shot 3 center 10s, won the competition, punched my ticket to the Olympics. So everybody screws up. I mean, I will tell you, if your listeners are out there, you think Olympians don't screw up. Olympians are serial failures that did it so many times they messed up messing up and succeeded a few times despite themselves. So, so have some grace and forgiveness for yourself, and if you screw up in the middle of a dance deal, whatever, have a plan to overcome it, because, hey, it's probably going to happen.
It's going to happen. So, and right. Again, yeah. I'm not going for, well, maybe I'll get a medal, but I could get a medal, but I'm not going for the Olympic team and stuff like that. I'm just going to have fun. And I appreciate those wise words, and just really appreciate you being with me today. I know both of our schedules are super crazy, yours a little bit more than mine, but again, really appreciate you, Eli, to be with me today and to share the words of wisdom. And I always appreciate everything that you do share. If you're interested in getting in touch with Eli or following, seeing his journey in the past and into the future, again, I'm really super excited to continue on learning from you about those genetics that you're involved in, because I think that's a pretty exciting wave of the future. Again, all of that will be in the show notes. You'll be able to connect up with him. And again, I think there's a few messages here, but the message I want you guys to hear is that, again, nutrition does play a key in the way that we show up, the way we live our life. It doesn't matter if we're Olympics or a mom at home or anything in between, but just pay attention to that. If you need some help, we're here to help you to figure out, again, how to build yourself up a strong foundation so that you can live your best life, whatever you choose to do. So thanks for being with me, Eli. Thanks, audience, for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for listening. If you like this podcast, head over to iTunes and leave me a 5-star review. Share it with others, and make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a thing. I've got a tribe over on Facebook, so head over there and search for Juggling the Chaos of Recovery Podcast Tribe. And do you know somebody who has a story to share, a story of recovery and hope? Please let me know, as I'd love to feature them as a guest on one of these next upcoming podcasts. And perhaps you're looking for a community of like-minded, collaborative, and supportive people who cheer each other on as we strive to improve our lives. If that sounds like something you've been looking for, schedule some time with me. You'll find the links in the show notes. Let's talk, and let me help you find your way. And I'm here to tell you that you're worth it.